So nice that you're spending your precious time with us today. So we're going to try to pack as much as we can into this short hour. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a private practice coach, and I'm also author of Navigating the Insurance Maze, the therapist's complete guide to working with insurance and whether you should, which is now in its 9th edition. I have worked in the trenches as an LMFT for 33 years, working with dozens of insurance plans. And so now I am now providing training to therapists and groups across the country in working with insurance and documentation and practice building. So that's my new incantation in life. All that stuff you never learned in graduate school, right? And my goal is to help therapists feel as confident about their businesses as they do about their therapy. And my contact information is at theinsurancemaze.com. That's my website. But we'll be talking about other ways to contact me if you have follow-up questions. All right. So let's take some of your pre-submitted questions. I kind of divided them into different sections. The first areas that I took some of the questions you seem to have a lot of questions about was coding. How do you code telehealth sessions? So the questions I got a lot of was, what codes and modifiers do you need to use when you're billing for telehealth? Well, a lot of us have been doing this for 3 or 4 years, but this is a question that is kind of constantly changing in some ways. So let's see. I put together some slides to help you out. So you're going to need 3 different codes for telehealth sessions. First, let's start with the CPT codes. We're going to do a really quick review. CPT codes are a 5-digit code that you use to tell insurance plans what kind of service you provided. The good news is that they're the same as for telehealth as they are for in-person sessions. So let's go over the most commonly used ones for psychotherapy. The 90791 should be your first session. Many of us don't even use that one or know to use it. So this is one that you should be using for couples, for families, for individuals. It's called diagnostic evaluation, but it's basically just first sessions for everybody. You're history taking, you're getting information, you're kind of trying to formulate a diagnosis. There is no time specified on this one. So you could have a 15-minute 90791, or you could have a 15-hour one, and you'd still use that code. Unfortunately, insurance would pay the same for the 15-minute as they would for the 15-hour. Okay, then we have 3, what I'm going to call individual therapy codes. A 90832, which is technically called a 30-minute individual therapy session, but the time range is officially 16 minutes to 37 minutes. Then you have the 90834, which is very popular. That's officially a 45-minute, but the official time range is 38 to 52 minutes. And our favorite one, the most popular one out there, 90837, which is an individual therapy 60 minutes, and that's 53 minutes and above. Now, I've put the word individual in quotes. That's not exactly how it's put in the CPT code manual, but there's a lot of confusion about these codes. People are, when they came out back in 2013, they said basically your client and or family member. So it was very confusing, but then they changed it to say, no. Family members really, it's not supposed to be used for ongoing couples or family therapy. These are supposed to, you can include informants, they called them, but the identified client had to be present for the most of the session or all of the session. So basically, you can only use these codes for individual sessions, or if you're doing individual therapy, you've got your individual therapy hat on, and you're seeing somebody ongoingly, let's say a child, and once in a while you bring in mom, once in a while you bring in dad. Maybe at the end of every session, you bring in mom for 15 minutes, but it's all in the service of ongoing individual therapy. You bring on in an informant to that care. But for ongoing couples or family therapy, you should not be using these codes. And I can't stress that enough. I've seen in audits, insurance plan sees that you've used these for ongoing couples therapy sessions and asks you to give the money back. So you don't want to be doing that. What codes should you be using? 90847 is a couples or family therapy code. That's officially a 50-minute code, but can be used for any session 26 minutes and above. 90846 is a couples therapy or family therapy without the client present. So that would be like if I saw mom alone, I'm seeing a child individually, but I just see mom alone for one session. Individual client's not there. Again, that's a 50-minute code, and it's officially 26 minutes and above. Now you're all going to say, but Barbara, I do 90-minute sessions. I do 120-minute sessions. I do Gottman. I do EMDR. I need more time. And how do I get paid for that more time? Well, billing for longer sessions could take up a whole nother webinar. But basically what happened is as of January 1st, 2023, they took away all the codes that could be used for extended sessions, those prolonged service codes, 99354, 99355. So as of today, when I'm doing this talk in September of 2023, there are no current codes for longer sessions. However, they're kind of trying to figure out new options for billing. Whether insurance is going to go along with them or not is something else. But I've put an article on what I'm going to call our landing page about billing for longer sessions. Now, let me stop and talk about what's the landing page. All throughout this webinar today, I'm going to talk about different resources. Instead of giving you 95 different links, I'm going to put them all on one page for this webinar. And you just go to that page, you enter your email address, and then you will be instantly taken to the landing page, which I'm calling it, where all the links, all the handouts, the slides for this webinar, the handouts and freebies that I'm going to talk about, all the resources are going to be on this one page. So please take a moment and write this down, theinsurancemaze.com/TBC, which stands for Telehealth, Billing, and Coverage, which is the name of our webinar today. So TBC. So write that down now. You don't think you'll need it, but as I go through, I'm going to give you all kinds of great stuff that's going to be on that page for free. Okay. What are some other codes you're going to need for telehealth? You're going to need modifiers. When you do telehealth, because basically the insurance plan doesn't know the difference between a CPT code for in-person or telehealth. They need to know. So a modifier tells them this was a telehealth session. So in addition to the CPT code, you're going to add a modifier. You don't need it for office visits, only for telehealth. Now for telehealth, you're going to generally use the modifier 95. That tells them, 95 tells them it was a telehealth session. The plan may also accept an older one, GT. Those are both video sessions. That's fine. Most plans accept both of those. Regents, if you work with Regents, they actually require GT, and to my knowledge, will not accept 95. So they're the only one I know that won't accept 95. If you don't know, it's good to check with the plan, but 95 is probably the safer one. Now there's a new phone session modifier that's just coming out because, of course, they constantly want to change everything to keep us on our toes, to make our lives miserable. And if you're doing audio only and phone sessions, 93 would be the new modifier that's coming out. Now, it seems like Medicaid seems to use that, but make sure before you use it. Medicare is now accepting that, and I understand they're going to require that after the 1st of 2024. Plans like Aetna are accepting 93 and FQ, or FQ is the older one, so you can check with them to see that. I think Cigna is accepting it, so double check with the health plan before you use if you're doing audio only phone sessions. Now the third type of code that you're going to need is a place of service code. Now you need place of service codes for all your therapy, but the place of service code tells the insurance plan where the client is at the time of the session. Now there's tons and tons of codes, and I'm going to tell you, the most common is 11 if the client is at office. Now, if you put nothing on there, they're going to assume that it was at office. So in the old days, if you gave out super bills, you didn't have a place of service code. They just assumed it was in person. But nowadays, we kind of have to spell it out. If the client was at your office, you want to put 11, and that means it was an in-person session. Now, for many years, they came up with a new telehealth session code, which was 02. Yay, that was easy, right? But then they had to make it hard. Then they split that a couple of years ago and said, oh, we're going to make it 10 for telehealth if the client's at their home, whatever they consider their home, and 02 is only going to be telehealth when the client's not at their home. Now, many of you will be like, what? I've been using 02 for all my telehealth clients. Well, they're paying the same and I don't think it's going to be an issue, but if you're strictly going to use what's right, and you can always check with your plan that you're billing, but this is the technical right use of the place of service codes. And 10 would be for when the client is at home, and 02 would be the client is not at wherever they consider their home. Now, again, to make it more complex, Medicare is saying, wait, yes, I know you're doing telehealth, but don't put down the 10 or the 02. Yes, we will process it. Yes, we will pay it, but we're going to pay it at a lower rate because we haven't basically got our computers fixed. So if you've been billing Medicare a 10 or a 02 in the last 3 years or so, you probably have been underpaid. You probably were paid at what's called the facility rate instead of the professional rate. So go back, look at what you were paid by Medicare, and you may find out you were underpaid. Resubmit your claims, and they may owe you a bunch of money. What they're telling us is at least until the end of 2023, use 11, the in-person, even if it was a telehealth session. You're welcome to check that out. But a lot of people have contacted me after seeing my presentations and said, oh my gosh, I got thousands of dollars back from Medicare. Thank you. So I hope I can help you with that. Now, there's a whole complete place of service code list is on the landing page. The link to that, again, that's my landing page, theinsurancemaze.com/TBC. There, you can get the whole place of service code list in case you met with somebody in a hospital or somewhere different than the ones I've listed here. And I also have a sample super bill in case you aren't. So all these codes need to go on a super bill if you are an out-of-network provider. And I have a sample super bill in my practice forms packet. Again, more information about that on my landing page. So let's look at what a sample super bill looks like. So at the top circle there, you'll see is going to have your name, your contact information. Then it's going to have your client name in the middle there, that circle, Maria Von Trapp, her date of birth, her diagnosis. I mean, this is just a sample of what information needs to be on a super bill. It doesn't need to be in this order or anything. But this is how I lay out my super bill. You've got the date of service. You've got the first circle there, the place of service code, CPT code, modifier. You want it to be really nice and neat and really clear. And then under service description, you can see I'm very clearly spelling out it was a video session. So I'm telling the insurance plan 1,000 ways that this was a video session and the charges, right? And then you have down below there your information, your EIN or tax ID number, your NPI number, your license number, all that good stuff. All right. How about some coverage? That's a lot of billing questions we shoved into a coding question. We shoved into a lot of slides there. All right, how about coverage questions? What changes do you see coming with telehealth billing and compensation? Will insurance start denying coverage? I think this was the single biggest question that I got asked in your pre-submitted questions. So I put together a couple thoughts here. This I could talk about for a long time, but let's. So obviously, it's no news to you that the COVID public health emergency led to an explosion of telehealth coverage, right? Unfortunately, it has led us to believe one of two myths. One, now telehealth is always covered. People are constantly contacting me and saying, well, of course, all my clients have telehealth, so it's always going to be covered. I can do whatever I want, basically, and it'll be covered. Or I have the other people saying, the sky is falling. I'm sure all my clients are going to be losing all their coverage now that COVID emergency is over. And so it's not, I think we really have to realize that the truth is that the coverage is going to vary depending on your state, on your health plan, and most of all, your client's account. You could have 3 different clients who have Blue Cross of California insurance, and one of them could have coverage, one could have minimal coverage, one could have no coverage. One could have coverage with a very high deductible or no copayment, and one could have it with high copayment. So I think we have to stop thinking of, is telehealth going to be covered or not? And we have to just be going, what is the coverage for this particular client? I will say some overall predictions. I think my overall prediction is that telehealth will generally continue to be covered. And my phrase is that the American public basically has just gotten something wonderful that it'll be like taking candy from a baby. I mean, it's going to be very hard to take back this benefit once they have all been benefiting from it for years, right? And I think it's going to be difficult, not impossible, but difficult. So my overall prediction is that probably almost all your clients will continue to have telehealth coverage. However, there may be caveats. I think after a shaking out period, we still don't really know what's going to be covered and what isn't going to be covered. But I think the two areas of highest vulnerability are going to be these. Number one, phone coverage, I think, is going to go first. I think for those of you who are doing phone sessions, these may be the ones that lose coverage first. For example, and again, this is a little shaky. I don't know 100% about this, but I just got in the mail this week a policy forwarded to me by somebody that was on the Availity website that Aetna is saying that they will not cover audio-only sessions after 12/1/2023. I'm trying to verify that, but I looked at the policy. It's written up. It's on the website. So this, and I know somebody who tried to get a waiver for her client particularly, and she was denied. So this is something that we need to check on. Obviously, this would have the biggest impact on elderly, minority, low-income clients who don't have access to video or can't come to your office. If you do audio, do document why you need to do it, and that the client was offered video, but the patient was able or unable to use it. So that would be my recommendation, is if you are doing audio only phone, be sure you're documenting why that's necessary, and that if you were able to offer video, that was recommended on a Medicare website that I saw. The other highest area of vulnerability, I think, is going to be out-of-network therapists. It may be that insurance plans retreat to, yes, our members can have telehealth, but they have to see a network therapist. That may be kind of their next way of offering it, but not offering it to everybody. So if you are an out-of-network therapist and you find, I would try to encourage that you check coverage repeatedly, have your clients routinely check coverage, make sure they don't lose their coverage. And if you find out that you are not going to continue to be covered, the client might be able to make some special arrangement to continue to see you because they were previously seeing you. And you might want to make some kind of single case agreement with the health plan. Before you do that, you might want to schedule a consultation with me. There's pros and cons of doing single case agreements, and you might want to really think about that. So that's something I can help you kind of determine. All right. How do I know if my client will continue to have telehealth coverage? Well, number one, I strongly recommend you check benefits by phone before seeing any client. And this is a telehealth client, an in-person client. I've been singing this song for 20 years, basically. And then again in each January. Most clients have benefits that start again every January. And I can tell you on January 3rd or 4th, after I kind of come back after partying on January 1st, I'm usually on the phone all day checking everybody's benefits, because it's amazing how many people have different benefits in the beginning of a new year. But definitely the best thing you can do is to constantly check with the insurance plan, or at least check from time to time to see if a client has telehealth coverage or will continue to have telehealth coverage. Now, what should you ask when you call? It seems very daunting maybe, but don't worry, I have you covered. On my landing page, which I described earlier, I'm giving away a freebie if you don't have it already. This is my checking coverage handout. It has the 13 essential questions that you should ask. It'll give you 6 questions to ask the client on the phone or whatever up front. And then when you call the health plan, what should you ask to be sure you're asking every possible question? Now, a lot of us say, oh, I'll just let the client tell me what their coverage is, or they can call the health plan. Well, if you're a network provider, I can't encourage you enough. This is your money. You're trying to get paid by this health plan. You need to make sure that that you've asked all the right questions up front. So many times people contact me for a consultation. Oh, Barbara, I'm not going to be paid for dozens and dozens of sessions. And time again, if they had called up front, they would have known that. So I can't encourage this more to avoid pain and suffering and lack of payment down the line. Take the time. I know it's time consuming, but I always make that call personally, frankly. I know there's other ways to check, but phone in my mind is actually, you can ask questions. There's more details. It's much better than checking online. It's much more thorough and much more accurate. All right. Will Medicare continue to cover telehealth? Had a lot of questions about that. So really quick summary of what's going on with Medicare and telehealth as of September 2023, as we record this. So my understanding is that phone sessions for mental health and substance abuse are now permanently covered by Medicare. But again, document the reason that you used the phone and that you offered them video sessions. Now, this could change, but that is my understanding. Also, it is my understanding that mental health is now permanently covered. You hear a lot about Medicare trying to decide whether or how much to support telehealth. But if you read between the lines, a lot of that is about medical and not mental health. My understanding is mental health is permanently covered, and clients can continue to get telehealth wherever they're located. That's new in the last couple of years, with no geographic restrictions. Now, also in 2022, the end of 2022, President Biden signed the omnibus spending bill, which extended other Medicare provisions for 2 years. So we have all the way till 12/2024, basically to the start of 2025, to extend all kinds of provisions around telehealth. So we've kicked it down the road a bit for other things. And advocates are hoping that this 2 years is going to give Congress time to make coverage permanent. Right now, for example, there's a requirement that clients be seen in person within 6 months of the first session and every 12 months afterwards. But that's been waived until 12/31/2024. So people have heard about this. Don't worry about it for now. And there's 2 bills in Congress that are seeking to remove this. Now, Medicare telehealth has been paid at the same rate as in person, but that probably is the first thing that we're going to see changed. Rates may be reduced at the end of 2023 unless lawmakers act. So again, a lot of this is moving. We don't really know. Now, I did post on the landing page Medicare's current telehealth billing guide. They came out with a brand new one, and you can go through that and see all the details. It's very helpful to read through that. And again, that's on our landing page at theinsurancemaze.com/TBC, telehealth billing and coverage, TBC. There's lots of good stuff on that page. All right. Will we be paid less for telehealth sessions? Okay, let's talk about this. There are 2 types of parity. This is called parity, when you're paid the same for in-person and not when you're paid, sorry. Parity means equal, okay? So there's 2 types of parity: telehealth service parity and telehealth payment parity. Service parity means it's a law that says, hey, insurance plans, if you offer this service in person, you have to also offer it via telehealth to your members. So many states have telehealth service parity laws. In fact, most of them do. But then telehealth payment parity laws say you have to pay the same for those 2 services. In states with no payment parity law, yes, insurance plans could start paying less. as of May of 2023, only 24 states required private plans to pay the same. Doesn't mean they won't. Many plans are paying the same for in-person as telehealth, but only 24 states mandate that. Now, if you want to see a state-by-state breakdown of what plans require that, what states require that, again, I've posted that on the landing page. Now, just a quick reminder, sometimes people write to me and say, oh, it's why does my client have different payments for in-person as telehealth? Well, a client might have a copay to be seen in person, but none when they do telehealth. But at the end, the therapist should be paid the same. So that's still covered by the parity law. But remember, a client could have a different copay. All right, let's talk about interstate telehealth. There were tons of questions about this, and there's so much confusion even after all this time about interstate telehealth. Will insurance cover it if I see a client in another state? Okay, first, let's review the laws related to interstate teletherapy. And a lot of us are still confused about this. Generally, you must be licensed to practice in the state where the client is located at the time of the session, or you have to have permission from that state's licensing board for that session to be legal. What? Many of you little minds are blown right this. Yes, if I want to see somebody in Texas and my client's feet are in Texas at the time of the session, and I am not licensed in Texas, I would be practicing illegally to see the client if she is in Texas and I am not licensed to practice there. Now, what's the second half of that? Or if I have permission from that state's licensing board. I could have gone to the Texas licensing board for my license, to their website, or called them up and seen, do they have temporary permissions? Do they have temporary licenses that I could get? What are their rules about interstate practice? But the one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't matter where the client resides. It doesn't matter that person might be a California resident and I reside in California. Maybe even that client is going off to college in Texas, but they're using their parents' insurance, and the parents are Californians and they're Californians, but they're just going off to school in Texas. Doesn't matter. It's where the client's feet are. Am I licensed there? Because you're considered to be doing business in that state, right? And many states do not allow interstate practice of any kind. Others may require some kind of registration. Others may allow some kind of temporary practice, but you would need to sign up, take a test. There's all kinds of different rules depending on all kinds of things. And it may depend on the state, and it may depend on your license. Don't ask your friends about this area because, first of all, friends are out there with a lot of misinformation. Friends are out there practicing legally because maybe they're a psychologist and they're able to practice in that state because psychologists have maybe in that particular state, your state and that state psychologists have an interactive agreement, but maybe you're a LCSW and the LCSW boards don't have an interactive agreement. So it may depend on your license. Don't ask your friends. Check yourself with the licensing board. On the landing page is a list of all the contact information for the licensing board in every state for every license. So again, cool stuff you're getting for showing up here today. Otherwise, keep in mind, it may be illegal. It probably is illegal for you to practice across state lines. And whenever you're practicing that way, it will not be covered by your malpractice if anything goes south. So this is a big risk. Are people all doing it? Yes, they're all doing it. Does that make it right? No. Does it make it very risky? Yes, it does. And yes, have there been lawsuits about this? Yes. What if you're seeing a couple of family members and they're in different states? Again, you need to be licensed in every state where a client is appearing on your screen. What about international? Big topic. I'm not a Got a lot of questions about that. I'm not an expert on this area, but it again depends on the country. Certain countries I know have rules and regulations about who can practice and who can't practice. Other states are very quiet about it. Don't have laws about But one thing about international that I do know is you should check with your malpractice coverage. It is my understanding that when you practice and see someone in another state, in another country, your malpractice may not cover you, and I'm pretty sure they don't. So check on that case. All right. What if you're or the client are just out of state temporarily? Are there circumstances when it's okay to see that client? So, this is a huge topic, and I just want to touch on it. A lot of you ask questions about this. If I'm out of my state temporarily and my client's feet are still in a state where I'm licensed, it's usually okay. It's usually fine. There's a couple states out there that you would want to check with the state that you're going to, because certain states, I heard that Nevada and I think Alaska, you are considered also doing business out of the state where the therapist is. So you probably want to check with the licensing board in that state, in both states, let's put it that way. But it's usually okay if you're the one going out of state. If the client is one going out of state, again, you are technically practicing illegally. So I would probably avoid it. The only circumstances that I would say it's still illegal, but you might still respond to that client is if the client is in an emergency. They're in a, they're on vacation in Las Vegas and suddenly they have a meltdown. I'm never advising you to say, oh, they're out of state, so you shouldn't even respond to them. You always have to weigh, would I rather always put crisis intervention above, probably, I would say, but above this type of thing. You want to respond, you want to help them seek crisis help, but you don't want to be seeing them for 20 months ongoingly. Or so definitely I don't say that the client being in a emergency makes it legal. It's still illegal, but it's probably something that I would rather take that risk to respond than risk client abandonment. So if it's legal for me to see a client in another state, does that mean insurance will cover it? Guess what? Even if it's legal, even if you're licensed in that other state or you have permission, insurance might not cover it. I want you to think of it that way, that there's the legal, and then some insurance plans have a higher standard. Health plans may require you to be physically in that client state. They may require you to be fully licensed in that other state, or in both states. They may require you to be in network in both states. They may pay less in that other state. So they may require you to be in country. Medicare requires you to be in country. So coverage is going to depend. You're going to have to on whether you're in network or out. So these are all questions that you need to check on. So my advice, consider getting or maintaining an office address in a state where your client's located if you're going to be out of state. Confirm where to file claims if your client is out of state. Many Blue Cross plans, for example, require that you send the bill to where the clinician is located, not where the client's located. So these are things you need to check on. Always check with state and local clients' plans, And remember that interstate practice laws apply whether the client uses insurance or not. My client just moved to a state where I'm not licensed to practice therapy. Can I just continue to work with her and call it coaching? Very common question. The answer is probably not. There's lots I can say about this, but what I'd rather do is have you read my article on coaching versus therapy. People are doing this. They're saying, oh, you moved to South Carolina. We'll just call it coaching from now on. This is a big mess. You can still be sued. You can still be accused of malpractice. Lots of problems can ensue here. So I would get legal counsel and start by reading my article on coaching versus therapy, which is on our landing page at theinsurancemaze.com/TBC. Okay, some other grab bag questions. I'm thinking of giving up my office. Will insurance plans be okay with this? Ooh, this is a big one. So policies are going to vary widely between plans, of course. I just did a July 2023 survey of 525 therapists, and 38% said they don't have an office or don't use the one they have. So this is becoming the new normal. I think we're going to see this more and more. Now, 9% said a plan had already told them you need a physical non-home office address, that you need to be giving us you need to maintain a non-home office address. So 10% were being told by a health plan that you can't go all telehealth, basically. Now, remember, a PO box on a claim or a super bill could be rejected. And the NPI enumerator, who gives out your NPI number, they require a physical address as a service location. So what is this leading us to? 17% said they were using their home address on claims and super bills. But this is a little risky, right? We're dealing with a very difficult population sometimes. Not sure that we always want to have our home address out there on our claims and super bills for our clients to see or their angry partners to see. 21%, so that almost a quarter, were now using some kind of a fake virtual address, like Regis or iPostal One. These are virtual addresses where you're able to get a fake office address, or they were using some kind of a colleague's address or an old office address. But all of these people, or not all these people, but many of these people worried about the ethics of giving out an address where you're not actually practicing, right? So I have some articles about this. I posted one of the article links on theinsurancemaze.com/TBC if you want to read more about giving up your office. Contact the plan. Ask them. Don't tell them I've given up my office. Say, I'm thinking of giving up my office. What should you ask them? Again, I'm giving you another freebie, which is what to ask the plan when you give up your office, when you move out of state, or when your client has left the state. So this freebie covers 3 different topics that have to do with going all telehealth or moving out of state or client. And that, again, is on the landing page. How should my session notes be different for a telehealth session? See next slide. All right, let's go over this quickly. Mostly your notes are going to be the same as in person, but for some states like California, they now require that all telehealth notes document some special things. And these are just best practices for those of you in other states too. If the session was video or phone, the client's location or address. Now, if the client was just at home and you have that address on file, you can just write client at home. If they're anywhere else, you are mandated in California and some states to write the actual street location, like client at 12 Main Street, Topeka, Kansas. Why? 2 reasons. 1, you're trying to tell them that you know where to, you have an emergency address in case the client melts down during the session, you can send help. 2, you're also documenting that you are legally, the client's in a place where you're legally able to treat them. It's also good to write, or mandated that you write, client was deemed appropriate for telehealth. In many states, you're supposed to be assessing that in every session and documenting that you did. Telehealth consent obtained, something like that. Even if you have a telehealth consent on file, I asked the attorney, California attorney I spoke to, I said, hey, if I just have a telehealth consent on file, do I have to write that in every session? And he said, yep, that's part of the law. So verified client identity was even, it's supposed to be identity. That's also in the law. I don't know that you need to do this, but I would just write verified client identity, especially if it's a phone session. You can just use a word with the client, like guacamole or something, that's your secret word. And that way you know it's them. And Medicare may require the name of the HIPAA compliant platform that you use, the telehealth platform that you use. This is kind of a new thing that I'm kind of sussing out to see if they seem like they might need that. Now, I also, 2 pieces of documentation I highly recommend. I highly recommend a telehealth consent that's in writing. 44 states require a telehealth consent as of 8/23. I also recommend a credit card agreement. Many of us are taking our clients' credit cards, but we don't have a formal credit card agreement. So definitely do that. I have both of these available for purchase in my practice forms packet, and the link to that is on my on our landing page there at theinsurancemaze.com/TBC. I've heard California has a new law requiring telehealth training. Yes, I'm trying to help spread the word about this. As of July 1st, 2023, all California master's level therapists are required to take a one-time 3-hour telehealth law and ethics class before their license application or their next renewal. This should be able to double count as part of your mandatory L&E hours for all of you. This is not for California psychologists, but this is brand new. I'm trying to spread the word out there. I have one of these courses available in my online store. I'm not sure if SimplePractice has a 3-hour one, but make sure it's a 3-hour one. Okay, bonus slides. What other predictions do you see coming for telehealth? Here's some predictions about the future. As of 1/1/24, many of you know that Medicare has now opened, will now be opening to MFTs and counselors. My prediction is that they are going to be flooded by applications by therapists around the country. My guess is that my last thing I heard about that is that those applications are probably going to be starting to open in like November, maybe, of 2023. And I just think if you want to become a Medicare provider and you're an MFT or a counselor, it may take several months, and you need to be really patient, and you shouldn't be like telling clients, hey, any day now kind of thing. I think you just need to be really patient. It may take many months. I don't trust Medicare to be up and running on this quickly. So, but again, that's a great thing. More therapists are going to be on Medicare. And so that's good. More of us are going to be licensed in other states. I'm already seeing that many, many therapists are now getting licensed in other states, which is wonderful. More clinicians are joining multi-state groups like Headway, Talkspace, Alma, which will credential you with health plans and bill for you. They take care of all the billing. They also can work sometimes to get you higher reimbursement rates with insurance plans because they're such a big group. There's downsides. What I see is that a lot of people join these groups and really love the fact that they don't have to take care of the billing and they don't have to take care of the credentialing and they get higher paid. But there's a loss of control that I'm concerned about. Sometimes there's a loss, if something happens and, for example, that a client it turns out that the insurance plan doesn't pay as much as is expected, one of these groups might turn around to the client and try to say, oh, okay, now you owe us more money. Whereas if you were the only one handling that, you might say, never mind, client, I'll just eat that. There's just ways when there's a third party involved, you lose a bit of your control. Also, trying to resolve problems when there's a third party involved, it sometimes becomes harder. So something to really think about. And I'm kind of hesitant about these third parties. More network clinicians will resign. I am seeing that happening. My survey showed 24%, that's like a quarter, plan to leave at least one plan this year, and only 11% said they intended to apply. So I think we're seeing a steady flow out away from working with insurance plans and a smaller number moving toward working with insurance. So a couple of things that you might hear about that I just want you to understand when you hear it. Plans may start asking you to sign a telehealth attestation. What is this? This is where they say to you, hey, if you want to be a telehealth provider for us, you need to attest that you understand the laws of our state related to telehealth and that you understand our policies related to telehealth. And it's usually a very simple thing. or they may ask you to create a telehealth policies and procedures, TPP. This is basically just create, what are your policies related to telehealth? What are your emergency policies? What if a client gets cut off during a session? What about HIPAA? What steps are you taking for security? So this is not something you give to the client. It's just something you have in your file cabinet somewhere where you outline telehealth policies and procedures, and you're able to take it out if needed and show it to somebody. I have one of these telehealth policies and procedures that you can purchase in my online store. Again, the link is on our landing page. And just so you know, 33% of therapists in my survey, so that's 1/3, had already been asked to sign either a telehealth attestation or had been asked to put together a telehealth policies and procedures by a health plan. So this is something that's probably coming. I'm thinking of moving out of the state. Will this be a problem for the insurance plans I work with? Let's see, is that the one I want to take? Yeah, let's take that one, and then we'll go to live questions. All right. How do health plans feel if you move out of state? Policies are going to vary by health plan and state. Again, you're going to need to contact the plan. They may be fine, but you may need to be licensed or credentialed in both states. And my understanding is Regions, for example, does require you to be licensed and credentialed in both states. Now, the reason I want to bring this up before we take live questions is, for example, Blue Cross of California told providers they must be physically in state to be on the panel. And I heard from many providers that they immediately terminated contracts when they learned the clinician had moved out of state. So this is scary. These clinicians had contacted Blue Cross and said, hey, I just want to let you know I have a new address, and all of a sudden the contract was terminated that day, leaving all their clients hanging. So this is why I told you, when you call the health plan to tell them, don't tell them you've already moved out of state, particularly with Blue Cross. I hear they are much more difficult about this. One Blue Cross provider was told by the Blue Cross rep, just keep an in-state billing address. Don't let us know that you've moved out of state. Okay. So yeah, what can I tell you? All right. So let's go forward here. I have some bonus slides. The slide handouts are on, you can download them on the landing page. So there are some bonus slides. And again, they're all on this web page here. TBC, the insurance maze, TBC. And here's the Ask a Biller, what out of network therapists should know about billing. That's our next one in November. So we're going to be talking about what you out of network folks should know about billing. Often we think we don't need to know if we're not contracted with insurance plans, but there's so much you do need to know. So that will be coming up in November. You can register now. Registration is open. And our entire series of these Ask a Biller videos are free, and they're at SimplePractice.com, Ask a Biller series. And then my next webinar that I sponsor is called Show Me the Money, Understanding Reimbursement Rates, Raises, and Resigning. And that's on September 23rd. And the information is there and on the landing page about that event and how to register it. And if you're watching this after September 23rd, that recording will be available in my store. And the recording for this webinar, you're going to be emailed a copy when the recording when it's ready. Cheyenne, you want to talk about pollen, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can hop back in. So just as a reminder, please sign up for Pollen. This is where you'll get the latest industry news. We have a ton of resources, PDFs that you can download, and then we have weekly articles. So if you just go to simplepractice.com/pollen, you can enter your email and subscribe that way, and you'll also get all of our latest webinars and things like that. And now, do you want to cover the freebies, Barbara?
No, now we're going to take live questions, and I'm just going to leave it on this slide while we talk. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah. let's go over to live questions, Ruth. Or I can start with our first one. Okay. First question comes from Hillary. Can you go over whether it is still okay to use non-HIPAA compliant platforms that were allowed during COVID and which platforms are allowed?
Right. No, it is not still okay. As of August 8th, I think it was, you can no longer use, I mean, it was never okay to use non-compliant, but they were not enforcing any penalty for using them. So anyway, now we are not allowed, must be using HIPAA compliant telehealth platforms. Which platforms are allowed? The best thing to do is to contact, I mean, I have a list, but I didn't include it. And I can only basically go by what telehealth platforms say they are HIPAA compliant. So the best thing to do is reach out to different ones, but they include the paid versions of Zoom, not the free version of Zoom. So if you're if you're using Zoom, that's a very popular one. SimplePractice, of course. Just make sure it has a BAA and that you download the BAA for whatever. DoxyMe, I think the ones you want to stay away from are free. What? I'm totally blanking now. Anyway, just when you contact the name of the platform, just ask them if it's HIPAA compliant and whether it comes with a BAA. And that's the business associate agreement that makes it HIPAA compliant.
Thank you, Barbara. Next question comes from Valerie. One of our providers does telehealth 2 days a week from her home office. We're wondering what address we need to enter on insurance claims. Can we use our office address?
Yeah. Again, it's not where the therapist is sitting. Not again, but that's a great question. You can be at home the whole time. If you have an office address, use your office address. That's your official business address, and that's your service location. It becomes dicey when you don't have an official physical office address. That's more where it becomes problematic. It's not, though, it doesn't have to be where you're sitting. I actually rent an office 1 day a week. I'm never there. So I can do all my telehealth from home, but I'm going to use that address on all my bills, all my claims.
Next question comes from Sarah. How does insurance know if the client is
it's traveling?
Is this more of an ethical issue than anything else?
No, it's a legal issue. Basically, you are treating someone who is physically in another state. You are not licensed to practice. You are practicing beyond the scope of your license. So, right, insurance isn't going to know. You're probably just going to put down their home address. So yes, insurance isn't going to know, but it's a legal issue. And if anything happens to that client and it comes up that you're treating somebody in another state, yeah.
Thank you. Next question from Lori. If you live in a state that requires telehealth payment parity, I'm in Illinois, but see clients outside of state, SIPACT, will the parity laws changing in other states impact my rates since I'm paid at the local Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO rates?
It's a great question. I would guess that the payment parity laws only apply to the state that the service is taking place in. If the client, so I would think if it would have to be that the payment parity would have to be the state that you're seeing that the client is in. But it's a guess.
Next question comes from Desiree. Client not at home. Does this mean for when they are in the car or, let's say, on vacation in another state?
Well, if you're talking about place of service codes, client not, oh no, you're thinking about documenting. So client, I think this person's asking about how I document in the session. So client at home means that I've already got their address on file somewhere. If they're not at home, basically I need to just write the actual physical address. So if they're in their car, I'm going to write at Starbucks, parked in front of Starbucks on Hamilton at, Winchester in San Jose, California. So I'm going to give as much detail as I can so that again, keep thinking, if I needed to send emergency help, how would they be identified? If there's a vacation in another state, first of all, I'm going to ask myself, am I licensed to practice there? And sometimes a client has appeared on screen and they tell me, oh, I'm at my grandma's in Florida. And I'm like, I can't see you. But second thing is, if I am legally able to see them, then I'm going to write that they're at, 223 Main Street in Tuscaloosa, Florida, whatever. So yeah, actually put down where to send help. Keep that in your mind.
Next question from Gina. Are these codes for all disciplines or just psychotherapy?
Just psychotherapy.
Okay, that was an easy one. Next question from Maxine. What is T101 for? Is this valid and billable still, or only under the PHE?
Yeah, I don't know. And I be very careful with T codes. Mostly we don't deal with those. Yeah.
Okay. Probably have time for two more, just FYI. Next one from Dina. I always get confused with code 11. How is client in person if I'm meeting them via telehealth?
Yeah, you never use 11 for telehealth. That's for those of us who are still seeing clients or are seeing clients in person. The only time you use 11 these days is going to be for Medicare, who's telling us, yes, I know it's telehealth, but we want you to use in the 11 for all of our folks so that you get paid at the higher rate, the same rate as in person. But they're basically telling you to use the wrong code. But other than Medicare, you shouldn't be using 11 for a telehealth session. 11 is only to be used for in-person.
Next question from Julia. I work in group practice and we do supervisor billing for insurance companies that allow it. The supervising doctor is licensed in New York and New Jersey. The other clinicians are only licensed in New York. Can we do supervisor billing for New Jersey clients for the other clinicians?
Oh, I'm afraid that's too into the weeds. I couldn't really answer that. You'd have to ask with your licensing board and your insurance plans involved.
Okay, no problem. I think we are at time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for everyone for joining. I'll paste Barbara's link down below for the insurancemaze.com/TBC. It's also pinned if you go to the pinned comments. As always, thank you so much, Barbara. This was clearly so helpful. I wish we had time to cover all the great questions that we received, but unfortunately we ran out. But you can join Barbara at her next webinar and then also the one we're having with Barbara in November. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you again, Barbara. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody, and you can get the